In this demo, I'm going to show you how to run your first app on Kubernetes using pods. First of all, you will need to clone my GitHub repository. So again, you can use the git clone command, or you can go to this website and you can download a zip file. So this repository is called Kubernetes course. On this machine, I have my Minikube cluster running, just as I explained in one of the previous demos. So I can immediately use kubectl. So kubectl get node is showing me that my Minikube is running. So I have here under first app, I have the hello world YAML file. And this file I'm going to use to create the pod. So I'm going to use kubectl create -f first app hello world.yaml. Kubernetes came back to me. It said pod node hello world example.com created. So if I now use kubectl get pod, then you can see the pod that was previously running, which is a pod that I started when I installed this cluster, which is already running. And then I have another pod node hello world example.com. So let's have a look at this one using describe pod and then the name. At the bottom you see the events, and you see one of the events is that it's now pulling the image. So it's pulling this image, needs to download the image, and then it will start the pod. So here I see some info about container, my labels, status is pending. If you don't have a very fast internet connection, it can take some time to pull this image. So now it started the container with Docker ID and then the ID. Our pod is now running. There are now multiple ways to get to this pod. The first way is to use port forwarding. We can use kubectl to port forward, and then we just use the name of the pod. We can port forward the pod port, which is 3000, and we can listen locally on port 8081. So then I can locally, on this machine, connect to 8081, and then kubectl is going to make sure that all this traffic is redirected to port 3000. So this stays open. I just have to open a new shell, and I can just do curl localhost on 8081, and then I get the hello world. This is one way to quickly test whether it is working. The second way is to create a service. In the next lecture, I will explain you how to create a service for AWS. If you're running a cluster on AWS, that's going to be interesting for you. If you're using Minikube, you can just expose the port and then connect directly. You can do the same on your AWS cluster, but on AWS, you have the possibility to use a load balancer. So a load balancer is always going to be better for you. Let me first show you how to expose this port. We're going to use kubectl expose. We're going to expose pod, and our pod name is node hello world example.com. And we are going to use type node port, which means that we can directly access port 3000 on Kubernetes and it will redirect to this pod. And actually, in this case, we also need to provide a name for this service. So we'll just say node hello world service, because you cannot use this as a name for a service. So a service node hello world service exposed. Now we just need to know the IP address of the Kubernetes cluster to connect to. If you're on AWS, you can just use your master node. You will have to change your security groups though. If you're on Minikube service, this node hello world service --URL. And this gives us the correct mapping. So this port forwards to port 3000. So if we do kubectl get service, we see the newly created service that exposes port 3000. With Minikube, we can use this port to connect to this service, because this is an IP address that I can use from my host system, from my Mac. These IP addresses here are IP addresses within our cluster. So those are two different things. So I'm going to use my browser, and hello world, it is working.